Welcome to the Grazing Grass Podcast, episode 141.
I don't know if you've ever seen a bunch of like-minded people geek out at looking at dung beetles in cow manure, but that's the kind of people we are.
You're listening to the Grazing Grass Podcast, sharing information and stories of grass-based livestock production utilizing regenerative practices. I'm your host, Cal Hardage. You're growing more than grass. You're growing a healthier ecosystem to help your cattle thrive in their environment. You're growing your livelihood by increasing your carrying capacity and reducing your operating costs. You're growing stronger communities and a legacy to last generations. The grazing management decisions you make today impact everything from the soil beneath your feet to the community all around you. That's why the Noble Research Institute created their Essentials of Regenerative Grazing course to teach ranchers like you easy-to-follow techniques to quickly assess your forage production and infrastructure capacity in order to begin grazing more efficiently. Together, they can help you grow not only a healthier operation, but a legacy that lasts. Learn more on their website at noble.org/grazing. It's noble.org/grazing. On today's show, we have Blane Stacy from Northeast Oklahoma. He is a rangeland management specialist for the Oklahoma Conservation Commission. And he also has a small farm not too far from me. On today's episode, we talk about his journey to where he is now, as well as getting started on 80 acres and how he's managing his cows. It's a great conversation. I think you'll enjoy it. 10 seconds about the farm. We have rain in the forecast. Hopefully by the time you're listening to this, we have some rain falling. Also, I've been under the weather for the last few days. I blame my dad, but it's possible I could have caught it somewhere else too, so I guess I shouldn't do that. For 10 seconds about the podcast, if you're not part of the Grazing Grass community on Facebook, I suggest you join it. We've had a couple posts in the last few days that really stirred a lot of conversation. And that's the point of it, talking to like-minded people and being able to bounce ideas off of them, get their viewpoints. You know, it's so nice to have a discussion and understand that we all don't have the same viewpoints. So if you're not part of the Grazing Grass community, go to Facebook and do a search for Grazing Grass Community and join. Now you have to answer a question or two or you won't get in, but those are easy. But I suggest you go over there, join. Enough about my farm and about the podcast. Let's talk to Blane. Blane, we want to welcome you to the Grazing Grass Podcast. We're excited you're here today.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to discuss grass management, my little operation here in a beautiful corner of southeastern Nowata County, and hopefully give some tips, some tricks, and some ideas for other people along the way.
Sounds like a great plan. To get started, tell us just a little bit about yourself and your operation.
That is a loaded question, and I'll condense it to the best of my ability. Blane Stacy from New Allowee, Oklahoma. I have kind of two different ways I'm going to approach this. Number one is I am a rangeland management specialist for the Oklahoma Conservation Commission. I work with farmers, ranchers, producers all across the state of Oklahoma. We do education, outreach, and conservation technical assistance. What that basically means is I get a guy calling me and say, Blane, my grass ain't growing. Would you come and help me? Up to massive scale regenerative grazing management operations, looking for ideas, tips, tricks, everything from livestock behavior, grass function, grass morphology, grass ecology. But I'm also a practitioner. My little 80-acre grazing operation, we're about 2 miles due west of New Allowee, Oklahoma. Most of the time, it's a perfect little slice of heaven. It's a little bit dry today, but I think we put together a pretty good program that I've got more grass than everybody around me. I'll say that.
Oh, yeah.
The ability to maintain the functionality of a grazing ecosystem through livestock management has been repeated over and over. And not just as an educator, but now as a practitioner. We've been here on this place just a little over 2 years. We purchased this in April of 2022. But I've been involved in grazing management pretty much my entire life. We could go all the way back to 8th grade FFA class. My father was an FFA instructor at Oklahoma Union High School, and I joined the pasture and range judging team. So at a young age, had an interest in grass, grazing land ecology. And what I loved about the FFA range judging contest was it didn't approach things simply from a pasture grazing only scenario. In this contest, you had to evaluate the existing plant community, compare it to what would be considered a historic plant community. So it taught you not only to use visual evaluation, but compare that to what the grassland ecosystem would have been 200 years ago. Then we do an evaluation for livestock management. How good of a spot is this for beef cattle? You look at forage production, forage availability, other factors like distribution factors, brush canopy cover, distance to water, and invasive species pressure. And then a portion of the contest, you do the same thing, but evaluate for bobwhite quail habitat. So through this contest, grew up gaining an appreciation for natural rangeland ecosystems, was fortunate enough to be a state champion, went on to nationals, and was a national champion as well. From there, I guess I caught the eye of the state NRCS rangeland specialist at the time, Mark Mosley. He was also one of the co-authors of the judging manual. He approached my father. He says, "Mr. Stacy, I think I've got something your son would like." And they had a ecological academy is what they called it. Basically, it was summer camp for grass and soil and range nerds, which I very much was. So in the summer of 2003, I believe, we went out to the Black Mesa Ecological Academy, where the Natural Resource Conservation Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, BLM, and Forestry all worked together to put on this camp. And I thought, you guys get to do this every day. You get to evaluate grasslands. You get to go out and do field evaluations. So I was sold. I said, sign me up. So from there, the career arc gets a little murky. There's probably not a job I haven't done at some point. I've been everything from a environmental technician for a federal recognized tribe, for the Kaw tribe near Ponca City. I have been a NRCS USDA employee as an intern. I've done everything in between, from day work cowboying to training horses to working at steel pipe and supply facilities, but always coming back to my love for rangeland ecology and natural resources management. I landed with the Oklahoma Conservation Commission. So that's...
Did you go to college at OSU?
Yes. I did 2-year stint in Wilburton at Eastern Oklahoma State.
Oh, okay.
On a livestock judging scholarship of all things.
Oh, yes.
I showed livestock in high school and was very enjoyable. We'll get into this a little bit later, but the idea of a perfect animal in a show ring scenario doesn't quite fit with what we're looking at as far as an efficient grazing animal in these high intensity grazing scenarios. If we get off on that tangent, we'll get there. But from there, it was, I wanted to have a career in some kind of land resource management, and was lucky enough. And even with the Conservation Commission, my first 2 years was in water quality monitoring. I didn't necessarily start with the soil health program, which I currently work for. So 2 years of water quality monitoring, I gained an appreciation for the collection of data in that program, because that was a direct gauge of the conservation programs that were being applied statewide, either through NRCS, Conservation Commission, or our state and federal partners. So if we're having soil erosion, we apply conservation practices within a watershed. We go collect the water quality data before and after. If we can show an improvement of that water quality, our conservation practices are working. And grazing management was a huge push there, kind of in the mid-aughts, till about 2010. Prescribed grazing was a conservation practice through NRCS, and we were able to track that data. But in 2016, they said, "Blane, we love you in water quality, but we have an opportunity in soil. and soil health program. Would you like to do that? And I said, well, kind of explain what I'll be doing. So
Right. Yeah.
all of 2016, they had scheduled some plant identification workshops. So all my experience through FFA range judging, I forgot to mention that plant identification was also a part of that contest.
Oh,
You were
yes.
supposed to identify 20 plants at any stage of growth. It could be, we've had contests in the spring or fall. So you have to be able to identify big blue stem when it's that tall or when it's full
Oh, yes.
mature and seed it out. So that was right in my wheelhouse. I said,
Oh, yeah.
sign me up, be glad to, and haven't looked back since. To be honest, didn't really have a good background in what we would call managed grazing, regenerative grazing. Through university, I loved my time at Oklahoma State, but it was a pretty conventional set of
Right.
management rules, continuous set stock grazing. We hammered to death the stock, how to set stocking rates, but we never approached the true grazing management systems that can be implemented that truly mimic what we would call the historic grazing pattern. Don't know how far we want to get off into that, but
Yeah. Well, yeah. And, I attended OSU a few decades in advance of you, and kind of the same thing, looking at inputs and outputs and not really any grazing management there other than the conventional set stock.
we certainly knew how to cash flow. But
Yeah.
a rangeland, I could remember a derogatory term that they used. They called them native stomp lots. That's how they viewed these native rangeland ecosystem. It was just a space to get them a little grass in the summertime, a little hay out in the wintertime. They were continually overstocked to begin with, so it was just an input output. They brought inputs in, they brought in the feed, they brought in the hay, and they shipped the outputs to the feed yard essentially. Yeah. So not what would I call an efficient or profitable system, but as long as the banker got his note paid and you had a little bit left at the end of the year, not too many people were complaining.
Yeah. The other thing is, you're sharing your story there that jumped out at me is this rangeland judging contest, or the full name. Because when I went through FFA, we had land judging. We got in there, we looked at soil, we looked at topsoil, subsoil, water capability of it, etc. But this rangeland sounds really interesting to me. I'm assuming it's more recent than when I went through school.
Oh, I'm not sure when became an official contest. I remember being very small when my father was an ag teacher at Delaware High School, early 90s. He had a range judging team then.
So it may not be that my ag teacher was interested in that and I wasn't aware of it too.
Could be. I mean, God bless our teachers and educators. Ag teachers, they can get spread pretty thin between livestock showing, speeches, professional leadership, and then the students themselves and their supervised ag experiences. So I've seen that firsthand. The ag teachers, they kind of have to pick and choose what they're good at or what they're comfortable presenting and coaching teams on. And truth be told, there's a lot of land judges because it's a fairly simple contest. You don't get a lot of variability. The parameters are the same. You evaluate your soil, texture, permeability, slope, elevation, and then really all the other intricacies of that contest they're given to the students at the contest. All they have to do, it's more of a memorization thing. So if they can get soil texture and they can get slope and they can get the day that they're out there, the physical characteristics with some consistency, the rest of it's just memorization. Okay, well, if you see this, this, and this, you mark this. The range judging was a little bit more, I wouldn't say complex, but you had to have a broader knowledge base. Number one, you had to identify 130 plants before you could even complete there was 130 plants on that list. You may not see them all, but if you go evaluate a range site, you have to know what big blue stem, switchgrass, Indian grass, all these pretty common rangeland species look like at any stage of growth, whether they're 3 inches tall, fresh green regrowth after a prescribed burn, or into the fall after that plant has already senesced, set seed, and turned brown. So we've been trying to support our FFA and 4-H programs. We hosted a workshop in Stillwater earlier this summer and invited ag teachers to just come and experience what the contest is all about.
Oh,
We
yeah.
had probably
Yeah.
a dozen ag teachers across the state that weren't already sending teams to the state contest. Just gave them an opportunity to say it's don't be intimidated by the breadth of knowledge. If you can
Oh,
you can
yeah.
identify 20 or 25 plants and cover the main ones and know how to evaluate spatially grassland and mark some stuff on a card, you'll be fine. So we're trying to increase the participation on that contest. And I'm not going to let that contest die. But the simple fact is we had, I think, 5 teams at state FFA contest this year. And of those 5 teams, 3 of those ag teachers are either retiring or have already retired and simply support this one team. My father being one of them. He's been retired for 5 years from teaching ag, but he still does one contest. He helps out with the Rangeland judging contest through the FFA program.
Oh, yes. Well, I will have to bring it up to the ag teachers I know. I know when I went back to education, people asked, they assumed I went back to be an ag teacher. I'm like, no, that's way too much work for me to do something outside of school hours. There is just so many activities.
So definitely, it's if we could get that comfortability with that contest, and that's just getting those ag teachers exposed to it. I think we can bring that back up. Because on the other side, on the flip side of that, we're trying to find replacements for us.
Oh, yes.
We're looking for rangeland specialists. We're looking for plant and soil scientists, those kids that are in FFA that are interested in these careers, because frankly, we can't find those kids, or we're not finding those type of kids to fill our ranks for my professional career. And then if we could get a few of them interested in regenerative grazing at the same time and become disciples of this as well, we can spread the idea of regenerative grazing further and further.
Oh, yes. And I think that's a natural evolution as you gain knowledge about your rangeland ecology and build that knowledge there. You come across regenerative grazing, regenerative ag practices, and it really strikes your interest and you dive in deeper.
Absolutely. That's it. It was, I tell people all the time, if you read the Bible, it was Saul on the way to Damascus. That was kind of a moment that I had with regenerative grazing. Just a truly a mind-altering moment of, we're not trying to make these cows do anything they can't already do.
Right. Yeah.
We're mimicking the natural grazing pattern that shaped the Great Plains ecosystem. I think part of our discussion here a little bit is going to cover rangeland ecology, but that's what makes regenerative grazing so awesome. We're simply recreating the processes that shaped this central prairie ecosystem, albeit at a much smaller scale. And you're telling, when I first discovered regenerative grazing, my mindset was, so you're telling me I can make the ecosystem better and graze more cows?
Yeah.
That just was, why aren't we all doing this? And
lower your input costs, maybe make more money. Yeah.
So
those are all music.
We can shift gears a little bit and kind of jump into my operation.
Let's do that. Let's talk about what you're doing. And just for our listeners, Blane is only about 6 miles away from me.
We're tucked off here in what we call the Cherokee Prairies. So we're east of Bartlesville, west of the Ozark Plateau. There's a little kind of a wedge shape of native prairie. Unfortunately, a lot of it got coal mined back in the late 70s, early 80s. The place I purchased here was coal mined back in the late 1970s. It was after the date where they were required to go back in and restore it. So they came in, they strip mined, they moved all the rubble rock off, took the coal seams out, replaced the rubble rock, and then put the topsoil back on. Old historic soils maps tell me that this used to be an Apperson silty clay loam with a little bit of Catoosa soil. So we're talking silty clay type, pretty tight soils. For the most part, that's what we deal with. But I've got 80 acres of my own property. I've got a brother-in-law just to the east of me. He's a rope horse trainer. He's got a few old retired rope horses. So I do have an option to utilize some of his grass if I need to. Some
Yeah.
of his cows are running with mine. He was gifted some cows as a wedding gift 10 years ago. And when we finally moved back to the neighborhood, he said, Blane, you're the grass guy. I'll turn my cows in with yours. If we need to turn them out on my side for a period of time, we can do that. So in total, I've probably got 120 grazable acres that I can utilize. So being a disciple or an educator of regenerative grazing, regenerative agriculture through my career was chomping at the bit to get started on my own operation. We closed on this place in April of 22. And then I think when we came and toured the property, that was the last time it rained that particular year. In 2022, just a mile to the north where the edge of Ulagal Lake comes in, that was flooded when we purchased the place. So we couldn't even we couldn't even go up to Road 27 because the road was flooded. And after May 15th, I don't think it rained a bit the rest of 2022. So we've had
a few years with really nice spring rains that once it turns dry, it turns dry.
And call that a double-edged sword. It benefited me greatly.
Oh yeah.
I'll tell you why. So I had a farm service agency cow loan burning a hole in my pocket, but from the time we closed in April till we moved up here in June, it was already starting to turn a little dry. So I simply said, I'm just going to wait and see what happens. So two excellent things happened. Number one, this grass got a rest and recovery period that I don't think it has ever had. This was a lease pasture before this. And when we toured the place, it was pretty obvious that their idea was, we're going to take every blade of grass out here.
Yes.
Leave nothing but the bark on the trees. And we even ended up finding a dead cow from the land lessee. So from April till essentially October, during the growing season, this got a rest that it probably never had. And then about the time people were looking to start to disperse some livestock, I had a friend of mine that lives just up the road named Jeff O'Connor, who had some cattle that had some Pharaoh Cattle Company genetics. He was also a regenerative grazing practitioner doing daily moves, high intensity grazing type stuff. And he was trying to get rid of some older cows. And I was really interested in the genetics and the cows that were already broke to a system. So I purchased 10 head from him in October, and I purchased some from my father to kind of put together a little mixed match herd. And I jumped in head first. October, I think it was, well, if today's the 17th, it had been October 15th of 22. We had hot wire rolled out, ready to go. And
so let's jump to that time, getting your place ready for cattle. You bought this place. What did you do to get it ready for those cows come in?
Okay.
5, 6.
One, I was very fortunate. I have a spring-fed pond, and I have good 6-strand perimeter barbed wire fencing. So
nice. You had a good working perimeter already.
Yes, I didn't have to worry anything about that. My biggest concerns were how to implement some kind of grazing paddock and allow livestock to come back to water, and adding infrastructure, electric fencing to the perimeter fencing. So first off, I literally went to Orstland's down the road here in Nowata and bought the biggest solar charger that they had, which I found out later was not near enough to do what I needed to do with running multiple wires. You know, the ignorance of being a new disciple, I guess. So the cows that were already broke that I purchased from Jeff O'Connor, they were a godsend because they helped train my
they knew what was going on.
They knew what a hot wire was. They were just fine being in smaller spaced areas. So part of my career mindset is I'm trying to utilize this as a demonstration farm, not just my own operation. So I like to tell people I am as scientifically unscientific as possible. I am trying to implement methods that other people would, let me rephrase that. It's I'm trying not to be too excessive that people don't want to try it.
Right.
Every practice I implement, I run through my mind. It's usually, is this something my dad can do? Is this something
Yes.
a general 65-year-old farmer, retiree? My father, he drives a school bus for the school still, so he's got off-farm responsibility. But are the things that I'm implementing on my operation something that can be mimicked by anybody else in agricultural production?
Oh, yeah.
But I am meticulous in my data collection, photos, maintaining records, and trying to have some sort of scientific explanation for anything I try to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I'll be honest, that's the part I don't do a good job on. We collect a fair amount of data for our cattle, but actually for the land, I don't do a good enough job doing that. I've started keeping more records of it the last few years, but that's an area. And one thing you mentioned there was photos.
Mhm.
Photos are really nice because you can see progression that you've forgotten. So you can go back and you can be like, yeah, we made improvement here, but you pull up a photo, you're like, oh, wow, I forgot we were there. Are you doing anything to make sure you're photographing, taking pictures of the same area, or are you just doing it as you're out there each day? How are you managing that?
D, all of the above.
Oh, okay.
I try to recreate set point photos. Thankfully, I've got some pretty obvious landmarks on my place. I got a water tower in one corner over here. I've got a tree line, a very obvious tree line that is repeatable in several photos, and try to use those as my points of reference.
Which is a great way to do that. Find something that's not changing, or that's notable enough, a landmark there that you can put in your photos and you know where you're looking each time.
So just any general day, if I'm rolling out a new stretch of hot wire to build a new paddock, again, a super unscientifically scientific, I will hang a wire. I will count down 2 fence posts and hang a wire and go. My pasture is a 1/4 mile across by 1/2 mile long, where I do the bulk of my intensely managed grazing.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have quite the infrastructure I need on my brother-in-law's place, so we might give them bigger paddock size, but I usually utilize him for winter grazing anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So active growing season, I just step off 2 fence post length and hang a hot wire and go across the pasture. Now, I've done the exact calculation. It comes out to like 0.885 acres. So 24 head of adult cows, any given stage of gestation, if they've got calves on them, if they don't. So I know exactly how many livestock I've got. I know the exact amount of square footage doing daily moves. However, I'm just like anybody else. I get home late. I'm working my career outside of the farm, where I get home at 9 p.m. I might intentionally say, I'm going to leave those cows in there an extra day. Is it going to hurt anything? But I'm going to take pictures of it. I'm going to note it in my records. You could bring up the aerial photography from my ranch that's been updated on Google recently, and actually see the grazing strips across my property that I can point to exactly where I did that double grazing event. Just based off the change in the color of the grass. And I've got follow-ups of that where you can't tell there was any difference, even though it was essentially a double grazing event. Pretty excessive. I took it down probably more than I should have, but learning from some other guys who utilize ultra high density grazing, they might say, well, yeah, you had a little bit excessive utilization, but that's going to have a myriad of other positive benefits. You look at, the flush of root exudates that come after a grazing event that feed the microbiology that allow for a more rapid recovery of that plant community. So that all being said, I'm doing daily moves, 24 head of cows up on about an acre a move. There's some spots in the property as I graze closer to my house, I've got to do a little bit of a shifting and shaking around some wooded areas. What I've done with my watering point is I've got one pond in the corner.
But before you get there, Blane, I do want to go there. I just want a little clarification on your daily moves. Are you running Are they in not a half mile? Are they in a quarter-mile long strip?
Yes.
I thought that's what you were saying. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, it's a quarter mile wide. I don't know if we'll be able to see this on the camera, but here's a map I have of my property. I'll try to
Oh,
get
I see.
without a glare. You can see on this side, this is area that I had not grazed yet.
Yeah.
And you can see the strips as we come across. That double grazing event was back about right there. You can see a little bit of a difference in color variation.
Oh, yes.
We're getting a little bit of glare on that, but
Yeah.
and
Actually,
having this aerial photography is invaluable,
oh,
not
yeah.
just from a planning standpoint, but you can kind of track change over time just
Oh, you
through
can.
when Google updates your aerial photography.
Yeah. And one thing on that's really minor, your lines are pretty straight. I've got a 80, I've got lease, and I've got a high tensile running down the middle of it. So I'm only going 1/8 of a mile on any of my strips. And some days I get out there and I'm thinking, was I drinking before I made that strip? Because this one, I don't know. I think
That was me last year.
well, yeah. So how are you doing it so your lines are so good?
I've got a little Honda Rancher four-wheeler. I got a set of binoculars hanging on the handlebars, and I'm thankful I've got just enough of a gentle slope for the majority of the property I can see to the other side. So
Oh, yeah.
the way I utilize my paddock setup is, so there'll be a lane that the cows are already in, and I will have the next 2 grazing paddocks already set up.
Oh, okay.
So I go out there 5 o'clock in the evening, get off work, come in. It's time to move the cows to the next paddock. I'll prop a hot wire up with a piece of PVC pipe. When they see me come on the four-wheeler, they know it's time to roll to the next paddock. So they'll go into the next paddock. I'll lower that wire, and then I'll immediately roll up the back wire that was behind the paddock that they were just in.
Right, that they just left.
And then I'll go hop out another two grazing paddocks ahead or so and put that wire out. So I just get my binoculars out, look across that field and say, okay, there's the reel hanging on the fence from the last wire. It's going to be close, and just kind of eyeball it and let it rip. Away we go.
Oh, yeah.
If we got a little bend or a little bit of little curve or angle in it, doesn't hurt my feelings any. But I just know as long as I stepped off those 2 fence post length, that's about 30 feet wide for my fence post spacing, and take her across, and I've got the paddock set up for the next 2 days. And the reason I keep a couple paddocks set up out in front is, I get tied up, have a late evening, or I've got a couple days where I'm out of town. I'm trying to set this up where my loving wife, she can run out there on that four-wheeler, prop a hot wire up, and move the cows.
Oh, yeah.
That's another aspect of regenerative or managed grazing is it's got to be wife friendly. And my wife, she's very interested in the goings on. She loves working with the cows. She loves being out there outside, doing anything to help. So having it set up to where she can manage it on her own without a lot of assistance or input when I'm not there, it is invaluable because we can continue the operation with minimal interruption. Now, it depends on, she's a school teacher, so she gets home, if she's just beat after a long day at school, she can just go prop the wire up, move them, and not worry about anything else.
Oh, yeah.
And then I can come back the next day, and they still have another paddock set up that they can move into. I just have to go move 2 wires instead of 1.
Oh,
it takes me 30 minutes instead of 15 minutes.
Now, did you say on your lanes that you're giving them on your paddocks, you've got a lane set up back to water?
Yes. So I'll get my picture back out if we can keep from getting too much glare on it. So I have a pond here on the southwest corner. So I have a water lane set up along the perimeter fence on the south side of my property. So every one of these grazing strips will come down here, and I have a piece of PVC pipe that props up the water alley. Essentially, it's my water gate. So they'll graze down the strip, come back here, and I've got a water point with a tank at the overflow of my pond. And they can come back, graze, go to water. I usually start my grazing on the east side, so that allows my water alley to recover as well as my grazing strips.
Oh, yeah.
It is a sacrifice area, and I utilize it
Right.
as such. But it's about 20 feet wide water alley that those cattle can come down the grazing strip, go to water, and come back.
Yeah.
But that's had some unseen benefits as well. It's an excellent fire break.
Oh, yeah, it would be.
We're one of the last properties before you get down to Ulagal Lake. There's a lot of public hunting area, and not to talk bad about anybody, but we get some derelicts and degenerates that either throwing cigarettes out the window or lighting fires on
Oh, yeah.
purpose. I sleep at night knowing that if I got a south wind and somebody throws a cigarette out the window, it's going to burn up to that water alley and go out, because those
Yeah.
livestock have trampled that down. Most of the time, it's pretty bare soil closer to the pond. The plant community
Right.
that's further away from the pond, it can recover just as well as the grazing strips. And
Oh,
I've
yeah.
actually had the ability to utilize that as a little bit of an extra, or a little bit of a grazing patch.
Yeah. Yeah, that works really good for you. Utilize it, have that lane going to the pond. Now, did I understand correctly? You're running your poly wire from fence to fence, and you're using a PVC pipe to prop it up so that they can get in that alley to go.
Yes. So back to the issue of having enough power. I utilized I started with a solar Power Mac charger. It was one of those. It's like 2.5 joules of stored energy, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
think if I only had cows that were already previously hot wire broke, I think it would have been okay.
Oh, yeah.
Invariably, you always have a couple gals in the bunch that they're just not team players. They're gonna exploit the loopholes. They're gonna find the low spots. They're gonna figure out that I can get underneath that wire, and it only hurts for that much.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, but once one of them starts figuring out, they start teaching those bad habits to the rest of them. So I fought that for pretty much all of the fall and into the winter of 2022. So
Oh, yes.
combined with, we weren't getting good electric current through grounding because the soils were so dry. I ended up having to run a double wire every time I moved. And because of that, I essentially only had 2 paddocks set up at a time. So
Yeah.
sometimes if I couldn't get to them or couldn't set up an additional paddock, I was utilizing it a little bit heavier than I wanted to, but it was still during the winter going into the spring.
Oh, yeah.
So in summer of 2023, we were blessed with average moisture, depending on it when we got it. And I went ahead and splurged for a SpeedRite 6000i charger
Oh, yes.
energizer with the remote.
And that's got the remote.
Always buy the remote. That thing is the best thing since sliced bread. I'll tell
Oh, yeah.
anybody who will listen. A side note, though, my charger just quit working about 3 days ago. Not sure
Oh,
what
no.
happened. I ran some tests. It did some blinking light things, and I'm going to probably end up having to send it back to Datmars to have it either repaired or replaced. It's still under warranty. I don't know what happened there, but up until then, it was working wonderfully.
Oh, yeah.
And then what I did was I did an offset high tensile wire along my perimeter. I did that for 2 reasons. I could have ran one right across the center of the property lawways and could have done grazing off one side, off the other side, and made it work. But the width, the 1/4 mile width of the property, I still think I'm getting fair to decent utilization without having to deal with another permanent wire that if I don't like it,
yeah.
I got to spend a lot of time taking it back down. So the
Yeah.
high tensile along the perimeter is essentially just an anchor point that I can go anywhere I need to and not have to worry about moving a solar charger closer or farther away or worry about
Oh, yeah.
regrounding it. I've got 6 of those 6-foot ground rods in the ground at the house hooked up to the high tensile wire. I've got 6 joules of pop everywhere I need it. And that's been the best investment I've made so far.
Oh, yeah. Well, a good energizer will change your opinion of rotational grazing.
Absolutely.
A poor one will cause you to give it up faster than you thought you would, and a good one will make you continue longer than you thought you might.
Through conversations with other producers, either producers that have been doing it for quite a while, the opportunity to go to a lot of these grazing management conferences through my career, not only to help facilitate me as an educator, but to take stuff home for my own operation, to hear the gurus like Jim Garrish and Greg
Oh, yeah.
Judy, who have forgot probably more than I've learned, but
Right.
having Jim Garrish speak in an event up in Kansas 2 years ago, and he wrote the blueprint on, here's what I do, here's what you probably need to do, everything from fencing design, anchors, high tensile, to the energizers you need. So having the ability to listen to him, flip the switch and says, I was undergunned. I didn't have enough electric power going to deter these livestock.
Yeah.
Kind of a little bit of a side benefit. It keeps the white-tailed deer from testing it as much. Once they figure out, they run through it one time and it lights them up. They don't just sprint across my pasture anymore. They kind of, they'll take their sweet time trotting across there. And I hope they still do that here in November when gun season rolls around.
Oh, yeah.
So ulterior motives and extra benefits, I guess.
Yeah. Slow them down. I know when this lease property, when I first put up my wire, I had some deer issues, but now I don't have any. And I put it down the center, but doing it again, I think I'd do a perimeter and with longer runs. I was thinking, well, that's less walking, except now my wire's not quite where I want it. And I'm thinking about split or cutting it right in the middle so I can have some different lanes going. So yeah, keeping that area open so you can make adjustments as you need to in the future works really good.
Don't build yourself into a box that you can't get out of, I guess would be a good way to put that.
Yeah.
So and I'm not running any particular brand or kind. I'm a mixed match kind of guy. I utilize several different brands of post. I've got O'Brien's on what I call my semi-permanent line. So my water lane, and I've got a couple wires that I leave just for, if I need to hem them up in the corner to get them to the lot, leaving that one wire in one particular place is easier to catch them on a terrain feature where they already like to go back to shade. I leave one wire up just to kind of, if I need to catch them and spill them in that alley, I utilize that. But I've got Gallagher reels, Terragate reels, O'Brien post, Gallagher post, Speed Right, Charger. It's just, I've put together kind of a blend of what works for me.
Oh, yeah. I got two questions on that. Okay. First one's a real simple numbers question. About how many reels are you using each day? Or not using each day, but you're needed out there for your cattle setup?
Since I'm a pretty small operation, I have 6 reels total.
Oh, yeah.
I try to have 4 of those out in my grazing pattern every day. So 4 reels means I've got 3 lanes set up. The lane they're in, the lane they'll go into tomorrow. And then if I don't have time to go set it up, they'll have a reel to go into the third day. And then I usually keep one hanging. I've got a little mini reel hanging on the four wheeler if I just need to make a spin out and get around the cow that's gotten out. You want to talk fringe benefits. If you leave some thatch out there in your grassland and that hot wire is laying about 12 inches off the ground, and that cow that knows what it is, even though it's not up there at that 36-inch height where she normally sees it, if I just jump on that four-wheeler and make a big circle around her and just hold on to it, and that wire kind of wants to swing in around her, she'll tuck tail and go back where she needs to go.
Oh, yeah.
So, utilizing that cow psychology. And then I just got one reel hanging at the house as a spare if I need to. If I need to go do something squirrely different, cross fence something, or really what I use it for most often is if my neighbor's cows get on to me, I can I can just do kind of a quick alleyway to one of the either gates on either end that adjoin myself and my neighbor, and get his cows back where they need to go.
Oh, yeah.
Another negative of managed grazing is when you've got grass and your neighbor doesn't, your fences all start to lean.
Or start leaning in. Yeah.
They start getting that little bit of an angle on it. I've got a neighbor, he's a great guy, but he's kind of one of those, if there's a blade of grass out there left at the end of the growing season, that's something he's wasted. He's got the prettiest patch of broomweed in the county.
Oh, yeah. Well, at least your fences aren't leaning out. Um, we have a couple fences along the road leaning out, and it drives my dad crazy because they're leaning out. But it wasn't the goats, it wasn't the sheep, it wasn't the cattle that did that. I had a few llamas, and the llamas will stick their head through that fence and push on it, and it's goat wire.
Okay.
So they will stick their head through it and graze. I'm down to one llama now, and I don't think she'll get replaced. She'll finish out her time here. But those are the animals that pushed our fence, leaned it over some, and Dad cannot stand those fences leaning. Well, I don't want to see him leaning fences either, but it drives him crazy. And that llama will reach out there, and you can see how far she can reach on the bar ditch. And why is she doing that? It beats me.
Because she can.
She can, yeah. Because it's about like a horse reaching out there. She's got quite the reach on it. The other thing about your lanes before we move on to our overgrazing section, shade. Do you have enough trees out there? Is shade a factor for you?
Yes, I've got shade. So my 80-acre block, I've got shade on one end and I've got shade on the other end. I've got nothing in the middle. So as such, I try to utilize those unshaded areas during spring, fall, time where thermal impact's not going to be as big of an issue.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say you're not going to catch a 95+ degree day in May where as soon as they get done grazing in the morning, they're all going to wad up in the water alley.
Oh, yeah.
I've got some hackberry stuff growing in the fence row just along the perimeter that, depending on the time of year, will catch a little bit of a southern lean and provide some shade. Again, it doesn't really bother me if they're hanging out in that water alley because it's a fire break and it's already established sacrificed area anyway. So I try to plan my grazing. If I'm making a move through the property, they're grazing the open areas that have limited shade during the non-impactful days, spring and fall. When it's 105 and hot, I got them on either end of the pasture. It kind of depends on where we started. I may be making a nice pattern across there, and if it turns 105 and it's hot, it's muggy, I may skip 20 days worth of grazing strip and get them into shade and utilize that.
Oh, yeah.
And then kind of start over at square one where they have shade on the other end of the property. And
yes.
So always a factor. Just kind of got to play that with the weather. The good Lord deals you a good hand or a bad hand. You just kind of got to make lemonade out of lemons.
Right. And have the flexibility to do that. Yes. Blane, it's time we transition to our overgrazing section sponsored by Redmond. At Redmond, we know that you thrive when your animals do. That's why it's essential to fill the gaps in your herd's nutrition with the minerals that they need. Made by nature, our ancient mineral salt and conditioner clay are the catalyst in optimizing the nutrients your animals get from their forage. Unaltered and unrefined, our minerals have the natural balance and proportion that your animals prefer. This gives your herd the ability to naturally regulate their mineral consumption as they graze. Our minerals won't just help you improve the health of your animals, but will also help you naturally build soil fertility so you can grow more nutrient-dense pasture year after year. Nourish your animals, your soil, and your life with Redmond. Learn more at redmondagriculture.com. And we're going to take a deeper dive into something about your operation or you. And today we're going to talk about rangeland equality. I almost said equality, but maybe that's the wrong word. Rangeland ecology and restoring ecological. Boy, once you get past one or two syllables, I have trouble. So we're going to talk about rangeland ecology.
Yes. So like we said in the beginning, I wouldn't be where I'm at today without my love for the rangeland ecosystem. I don't know what it sets it apart from other grazing scenarios, grazing systems. Go to other parts of the world. there's just nothing's really cool about Bermuda grass and fescue. Those are the two major grass bases that we have here in Northeast Oklahoma, and nothing
Yes.
against those species. They make great forage for livestock. Fescue's got its issues you got to deal with. Bermuda grass has some issues as well. Bermuda grass behaves as well as you take care of it. It's kind of like I joke with
Oh,
my producers. It's kind of like my ex-girlfriend. You kept spending money on her. She kept looking really good. So with native rangeland, it's what shaped this ecosystem for eons were two major impacts: fire and grazing. So we've worked with partners through my professional career, but they had their conservation mindset was one of exclusion. We're going to remove
oh,
all impacts. And there's no better way to screw up an ecosystem if you remove all the impacts that shaped it. So
oh,
we've
yeah.
got some nature conservancy partners that have some property in South Central Oklahoma that when they were donated the property, there was the stipulation of, well, we want to set this aside. So we don't want to have
Right.
any cows out here. We want to just have wildlife. And the ecosystem is it's essentially in suspended animation. It's not functioning correctly because they've removed that grazing impact. So
Yeah. It wasn't created without that grazing impact.
yes. So marrying of two worlds, or at least in my world of grazing systems management and rangeland ecology, you can't have one without the other. So most of the listeners have probably heard this in some form or fashion. The Great Plains were shaped by bison, massive migratory herds of bison. There were historic accounts of the Great Southern Buffalo herd, 6 to 7 million animals estimated, and they would move as a mob. They would move across this ecosystem, creating a tremendous impact, 90 to 100% of forage utilization. There was if you've seen the movie Dances with Wolves, where this buffalo herd stampede, if they didn't eat it, they certainly trampled on it
Oh, yeah.
and urinated and manured on it. So it was just a tremendous impact. But then that long rest and recovery period that these grazing lands essentially evolved with, allowing that plant community to recover. But they all didn't recover with the same species. It's what we call ecological succession. So after a major disturbance, you would have the early successional species. We usually call them weeds.
Oh,
So
yes.
if we
Yeah.
took a tillage scenario, so a farmer's out there plowing the ground, or he plows up sod, use the pioneers, for example, that first succession of plants that tried to come back and repopulate were weeds. They were tall, rank, nasty stuff that probably tasted bad to livestock, probably had
Oh, yeah.
stickers, pokers, and thorns on it. But that plant was bioengineered to resist grazing impact to allow recovery for the next succession, the mid-successional species. We start to look at species like side oats, grama, several other different grass, forb, and legume species that their job was to fill in the gap after the weeds had done their job. And then the tertiary or the secondary succession, the mature blue stems, switchgrass, Indian grass, or at least for a tall grass prairie scenario, where
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
at in Northeast Oklahoma was historically tall grass prairie. So utilizing the methods of high intensity regenerative grazing, whatever term you choose to utilize, adaptive multi-paddock grazing, if you want to use total grazing, high density, we're shooting for the same target.
Right.
But truly, the recreation of this method of grazing restores the function of that ecosystem. Everything from the growth and regrowth of these grasses, who are ecologically evolved to tolerate a fair amount of grazing as long as they get an appropriate rest and recovery period. I recently had
Right.
the
Yeah.
opportunity to go through and vet the Noble Research Institute's Essentials of Grazing course. And they do a wonderful job of reinforcing the idea of there's no way you can harm a grass base in a single grazing event. you can turn 1,000,000 pounds of livestock onto an acre and let them, I don't want to say demolish it, but
Right.
excessive utilization. But as long as you get those cows off of that impact and allow appropriate rest and recovery, grass, water, sun, everything relative, give it 60 to 90 days. I tell my producers, don't mow your yard for 90 days. What happens then? They say, oh, my grass is thick and rank. And well, that's what your pasture could look like too, utilizing the same methods. What do we do when we mow our yards? We have a tremendous impact and a long rest and recovery period. Now we're just trading a cow for a lawnmower, but the impact is similar.
Oh, yeah. It's the same thing. Yeah.
We're recycling those nutrients. Where we see in a lot of our set stock continuous grazing scenarios, a lot of the highly palatable species get grazed down. The unpalatable species increase and overtake. We're talking species like broom sedge bluestem, perennial and annual three-ons, long spike tridents here in northeast Oklahoma. If you're in some wetter areas, it might be prairie cordgrass. But there's a whole suite of species that they belong in the ecosystem. They're native species, but as you continually selectively remove their competition, that being the high quality, high palatability species, that's when they start increasing overtaking. And when it gets to be such a problem, we hear farmers say, well, how do I kill it? I said, and it's essentially, it's not how to kill it. It's what management scenario have we been in for 20 plus years that caused this to be such a problem? So when for a lot of years, or at least in my collegiate professional development, it was we were addressing symptoms. We weren't looking at the causes of these problems. So the more I studied and the more I learned about regenerative grazing as an ecosystem function, not just a grazing management plan for the sake of pure profitability or management or reduction of input costs, whichever avenue you want to approach that from. It's truly the restoration of that ecosystem function that allows those native grasses to, one, provide a forage base, two, do their ecosystem function below ground with the soil. We talk a lot about soil health. It's the impact of grazing, removing the tops of those plants triggers a flush of root exudates below the soil. So those roots are leaking out sugary liquids to attract microbes. Those microbes break down, process, cycle, and recycle nutrients. And as long as there's an appropriate rest and recovery period where the plants can then grow, put out solar panels, then put carbon back down into their roots, we could talk about how the carbon cycle is affected. We could talk about how the water cycle is affected. If we have the ebb and flow of the root reduction after a grazing event and then the root regrowth after that rest and recovery period, we're talking about fracturing soil profiles open to where they can hold more moisture. We're in a D3 drought right now. We mentioned earlier that you know where your few blades of green grass are in your pasture. Well, I know exactly where my green grasses are in my pasture, and excluding the low-lying areas that gets a little bit of sub-irrigation from the pond, I could tell you exactly the grazing event that occurred in certain areas and how it relates to the greenness, because I've got a few strips where just accidentally on purpose, I double grazed a water alley just to see what would happen. So I got home late one night and I said, I'm just going to leave those cows in that strip an extra day and they'll either hurt it or they won't. And I've got a nice visual strip of, it's not much of a difference, but that grass is just the tiniest shade of greener than the strip before it or the strip after it. So seeing a little bit of a tangible benefit from that just kind of reinforces the fact that you can't hurt these grassland species in a single grazing event. They can handle it. They can take a licking and keep on ticking, but you got to give them that rest and recovery. And then for the rangeland ecology purpose, we talk about intrinsic benefits, wildlife, earthworms, the biology that comes in, and we still don't have a good grip on the total soil biome as far as the ecological functions of different microorganisms, bacteria, fungus, protozoa. We just know that if we do the grazing, the correct management in a correct fashion, we get the benefits from it, even if we don't know how it works. I tell people, I drive my truck every day. I don't know how to work on the engine, but I trust it to work as long as I do the maintenance and take care of it. I change the oil, tune her up every couple of years, make sure all the fluids are topped off. But I trust that system to work as long as I do the maintenance. And that's grazing management and rangeland ecology in a nutshell. Is if we do the management and the maintenance, it'll continue to work for you in a pretty efficient, I don't say low input, but reduced input manner that ultimately we can either run more cows on smaller acreages and put more money in our pockets.
Yeah, which, we have these noble goals and everything, but at the end of the day, if you're not getting more money in your pocket, you're not going to be around to do it.
That was what I fought with when I first entered my career in conservation, because we were so exclusionary. It was almost like you could get government conservation assistance to do nice things at the expense of your operation. Yeah, we'll go plant you some range plants, but then you have to exclude grazing as part of your conservation plan.
Oh yeah.
And I know it was to establish those species. You don't want to graze those species before they're ready, of course.
Right.
But again, those exclusionary practices just never did sit well with me as a producer. I was always of the mentality of if we're having to exclude anything, is it doing any good? Whether it's excluding the grazing or exclusion of species that should be in the ecosystem that we removed through essentially poor grazing practices.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Blane, it's time for us to transition to our famous 4 questions, sponsored by Ken Cove Farm Fence. Ken Cove Farm Fence is a proud supporter of the Grazing Grass podcast and grazers everywhere. At Ken Cove Farm Fence, they believe there's true value within the community of grazers and land stewards. The results that follow proper management and monitoring can change the very world around us. That's why Ken Cove is dedicated to providing an ever-expanding line of grazing products to make your chores easier and your land more abundant. Whether you're growing your own food on the homestead or grazing on thousands of acres, Ken Cove has everything you need to do it well. From reels to tumble wheels, polytwine to electric nets, water valves to water troughs, you'll find what you're looking for at Ken Cove. They carry brands like Speedrite, O'Brien's, Kiwi Tech, Strainrite, Job, and more. Ken Cove is proud to be part of your regenerative journey. Call them today or visit kencove.com, and be sure to follow them on social media and subscribe to the Ken Cove YouTube channel at Ken Cove Farm Fence for helpful how-to videos and new product releases. They're the same 4 questions we ask of all of our guests. And Blane, to get started, what's your favorite grazing grass related book or resource?
My favorite would probably have to be my first one, a recommendation from a friend. I had not quite fully shifted into a regenerative mindset. I was on board with the idea of soil health as it related to croplands, cover cropping as part of my career, but I wasn't a farmer, so I wasn't getting a lot of crossover. So I had a friend of mine, he was utilizing cover crops as a grazing resource, and I've actually got the book sitting right here just because of it. How to Not Go Broke Ranching by Walt Davis.
Oh, yes.
I had an excellent opportunity to get to listen to him speak at an event in Ada, Oklahoma, and it was right before he had passed away. So to have the opportunity to listen to him, to gain that knowledge, and to have this resource that Walt does an excellent job of breaking down basically everything we've discussed so far, but in a set of terms that anybody can understand and utilize. Where we get a little disconnect from, let's say, our research partners with our universities and the ranchers out there putting it into practice, verbiage and terminologies and the way research papers are written, Walt breaks down those barriers, puts it in a set of words that anybody can understand. and anybody can utilize and take forward.
Yeah. Excellent resource there. Our second question, what is your favorite tool for the farm?
My favorite tool, well, outside of the basics, the utilization of an ATV or the poly reels or the souped up
Yeah.
fence charger, I think everybody needs to invest in a set of shears and a gram scale to do grass clippings. Because
Oh, yes.
how do we know how many cattle we can run, or how do we know how long we can leave livestock in a paddock if we can't do forage evaluations? So there are several resources like the NRCS Web Soil Survey. If you utilized a pasture stick to do forage estimation and evaluations,
Yeah.
those are all great methods. But I think everybody needs once a year to go out and do an actual hoop grass clipping, because that gives you as accurate of a measurement of infield forage at that time, that snapshot in time, as you can get. So I've got what essentially equals out to a 1/10 of a meter hoop,
Oh,
and
okay.
just a scale, and I'll put I usually use a soil sample bag, and I'll cut all the grass in that hoop, stuff it in that bag. I'll weigh that bag beforehand, and then my little
Mhm.
gram scale, weigh it, and then extrapolate that into pounds of forage per acre. Now I know how much grass I have per acre. Then it's just a math problem of how to
Oh,
set up
yeah.
my paddocks, or figure out the length of time I need to run livestock in a particular area. So, for instance, I've gone out. If you utilize the Web Soil Survey, it says my ground makes about 3,800 pounds of grass per acre on an average year. Well, I haven't had an average year since I've been here.
Right.
There was dang dry. There was dry in the early part of the year, then wet in the second
Oh.
part of the summer. And I had a really good weed flush, but not so much
Mhm.
grass growth. And then this year I had an excellent early spring and early summer, and then it turned off dry and had rain since 4th of July. But
Oh, yeah.
having the ability to go out and get those snapshots of your forage availability in any type of growing season, I'm probably overstocked as we sit today, because I didn't get the regrowth I expected after my first
Oh, right.
grazing event.
Yeah.
Having the ability to import a little hay. I've got a brother-in-law right next door. He's got a 20 some odd acre hay meadow. He keeps some hay for his horses, but since his cows are running with mine, it's just kind of a combined operation. The only hay cost I have is I got to fill up the diesel tank for Dad when he comes and cuts the hay. He's got some
Oh,
hay
yeah.
meadows near us. As soon as he finishes up with some custom work, he comes and bales our 20 some acres, and it's just Dad doing us a favor. But having the ability to measure forage is essential. So outside of all our other tools that we have available, get you a scale clip and a hoop to do grass clippings.
And I'll be honest, I've never done that, but I think I ought to try it and see what it tells me.
And another
So-
benefit from that is once you start doing enough of those grass clippings, you can start calibrating your eye
Oh, yeah.
to, okay, if I visually see about 12 inches of, let's say, mixed Bermuda grass fescue, and you know that about 12 inches every time I've trimmed it or harvested it in my hoop, and say, well, it's coming out to about 4,500 pounds, and you go out there and do a cut and you're either way high or way low, you say, okay, did I do something incorrect? Am I truly that low? Do I need to repeat that? So it just helps calibrate or tune your optical illusionist, your eyes out there, to make sure you're still seeing and getting pretty close to where you need to be.
Oh, yeah. 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 Excellent. Our third question, what would you tell someone just getting started?
Find your people. I could not be in this operation or be excited about this type of regenerative grazing if I didn't have a group of people just like me that are so excited to talk about soil improvement, to talk about rangeland or grassland function, the intangibles outside of ag production. Now, don't get me wrong, we wouldn't do this if we didn't love it. The cows, the operation, just being in agriculture, providing that service to the world But I don't know if you've ever seen a bunch of like-minded people geek out at looking at dung beetles in cow manure, but that's the kind of people we are.
Oh, yeah.
There are resources available at our conservation offices. There's people that are willing to help, but the social media age, the one good benefit, if it really has any, is we've been able to find those communities that we wouldn't have found otherwise.
Oh,
Similar to the Grazing Grass podcast group. We've got listeners coming in from all different parts of the world, chiming in, talking about what works for them, what doesn't work for them,
yeah.
finding people in your areas. We had a podcast listener, it's been about a year ago now, that listened to my counterpart, Meg Gresky, when she came on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And this producer reaches out to Meg and says, I'm interested in some conservation assistance, really interested in the things that she'd spoke about. And Meg, she's our counterpart in Western Oklahoma. So she says, I'll get you in contact with Blane. He's our Eastern Oklahoma grazing land specialist. You want to know something crazy? Clint Dawson lives 3/4 of a mile down the road from me. So this producer through the podcast found somebody, and he's right down the road. He's my neighbor. When we purchased our current properties, we purchased them from the same guy. It was all part of just a dispersal sale. So finding those people in your community that we would never have found any other way without connecting through social media, through podcasting, finding those people. Once you got your community around you, they're going to be your biggest cheerleaders. They're going to be your biggest shoulders to cry on. They're going to be your support system. So find your people and everything else will fall into place. They'll give you advice. They'll give you suggestions, the works.
Oh, yeah. And what's that saying? You're the average of your 5 closest friends, the people you hang out with. And so often those are people we work with. But just think about the people you hang out with and what they are doing. Is that where you want to be?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
In anything. So, yeah. That's the reason I think my wife doesn't want to hang out with me as much. So I'm working on that. But
my wife is extremely interested in it. But there is a limit. I was sitting on the couch on my phone, and I have an app on my phone called the Soil Web app, and you can look at soils descriptions. Anyway, I'm scrolling through my phone, and she says, "What you reading?" I said, "Soils description." She went, "Ew." So, well, there's a limit, but take that with a grain of salt, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I invited my wife out to lunch tomorrow. I said, "Why don't we just go out, eat lunch somewhere tomorrow?" And instead of saying, "Hey, that's a great idea," or "I'd love to," she's like, "What farm are we going to, or what livestock are you looking at?"
Ulterior motives. I got you.
Well, since you brought it up, there are some livestock involved, but it's just the minor portion.
That's it. It's funny you say that. Greg Judy, Jim Garris, those guys, they say they're grass farmers. The livestock are the tool that we utilize to create the grass that we want, not vice versa. So that's always
Right.
that was another turning point of my mindset is we don't grow the grass to feed the cow. We feed the cow to grow the grass.
Yes. Yeah. The cattle are the tool you're using, or whatever livestock you're choosing to go with. Yeah. And lastly, Blane, where can others find out more about you?
As far as social media, I've got one social profile on Facebook for my professional career, the Oklahoma Conservation Commission. You can reach us for outreach, education, or assistance through the Oklahoma Conservation Commission website. If you want to email info@conservation.ok.gov for general information. Or you can reach me. My email is blane.stacy@conservation.ok.gov. Like I said earlier, I'm kind of the de facto Eastern Oklahoma grazing lands guy for our program. I'm not limited by that. I've got producers I still continue to work with scattered out throughout Oklahoma. But our program, the Oklahoma Conservation Commission Soil Health Program, we've got 5 soil health specialists scattered throughout the state. Meg Gresky is in Cheyenne, Oklahoma, so way out west. We've got an urban soil health specialist in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. We've got a soil health specialist, Josh Anderson, in Ardmore. So we're scattered out throughout the state to provide assistance to producers. Also, your local conservation district if you're in Oklahoma. Other states have different conservation programs, but the root of our services start at your local conservation office in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
If soil health is something you're interested in, managed grazing, that's always what I recommend as your first stop shop, because if they don't have what you need, they're going to call me anyway. But it's a good opportunity to get involved with the local conservation district, get signed up for programs. I always tell people, if you want to win the lottery, you got to buy a ticket. If you want to be eligible for financial assistance, you got to go in there and sign up.
Oh, yeah.
The nature of conservation assistance is we don't have enough money to help everybody. So you got to get your name in the hat for that. As everything else, the only other place you could probably find me is in the standings of the saddle bronc riding for the Cowboys Rodeo Association. I do moonlight as I tell people I am an amateur grazing artist and a semi-professional saddle bronc rider. And the only reason I bring rodeo up is because I have met so many regenerative-minded grazing people through the sport of rodeo. Yes. And most of them have been right here in Northeast Oklahoma. There's been a couple of young men that I didn't really know them that well, but we rodeoed, and was on the way to a rodeo in Arkansas, and he asked me, he said, "Blane, what do you do for a living?" And I kind of hemmed and hawed. I said, "Well, I do some grazing consultations, and I work for the Conservation Commission, and we do grazing management planning." And he goes, "So have you ever heard of Greg Judy?" And just immediate sparks go to flying. We didn't talk about rodeo the rest of the trip. We were grass nerds there and back. And so, and this guy, he's building me a Greg Judy style bale unroller. His name's Zane Bowman. He's building me a bale unroller that I can utilize this year. So,
very good.
I've made several contacts just through the sport of rodeo. The guy that pointed out the how to not go broke ranching, he's a pickup man for a rodeo company up in Missouri, but he just recently moved out of Okemah. So he was the one that told me. He said, "Have you read this book?" And I said, "No."
Yeah. And I can picture that, Blane, getting bucked off. He's coming by, get you off that horse, and you have that conversation as he takes you over to the side.
How's your gosh at your house? I said, "As good as it get at your house." "Yeah, it's good. That's usually about all the time we've got."
Well,
but
we'll have to talk later.
Yeah, it's the before and after talks at rodeos that he's working at and that I'm competing. Ultimately, end up talking about grass and grazing because it's such a core part of our personalities. It's almost like the rodeo portion is just a sidebar. It's I utilize the rodeo as a little bit of an extra income. You know, some people go golfing on the weekends. Some people, go to the casino. I've been fortunate enough that I don't know if you can see. I've got about 4 of those championship saddles. So they've blessed me the last several years. And I've been able to utilize that rodeo money to put it back in my operation. So I bought a new 4-wheeler last year with rodeo money. I paid for my infrastructure, my high tensile and my fence charger and all the accessories that go with it. Last year, paid for it by riding bucking horses. Now I am 36 years old and I'm the oldest guy back there. So that is coming to an end fairly quickly. But the only
imagine so.
I'm gonna shift into more of an administrative role. I'd like to become a rodeo judge and still be involved with it, but a lot less wear and tear on the body.
Yeah, that would probably be a little easier on your body and recovery the next day. Yeah.
And I'm trying to end with this story. So I left the rodeo part of it till the very end, but I truly cannot tell my story of where I am at in my professional career without rodeo. Because in 2007, I took an internship with the NRCS in Pawnee, Oklahoma. And there was a rangeland specialist that worked in the office. His name was Joe Vielma. And he was a cowboy. We were both interested in the Western lifestyle, rodeoing. The only rodeoing I had done previous to this was I tried to be a bull rider. I was way too tall. wasn't any good at it. I'd go enter a few bull ridings, get bucked off, and that was the end of the year. So one day in a conversation, he just mentioned, you ought to try riding saddle broncs, because number one, there's just not that many saddle bronc riders anymore. I don't know if it's just the cost of equipment to get started.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's a pretty steep learning curve. It took me 5 years before I could even really stay on a horse that was bucking and go through all the motions and make a successful ride. So,
Oh, yeah.
but at that time, he put that bug in my ear. For some reason, it stayed there. End of the summer, I had some money saved up for my internship. So I bought a bronc riding saddle and started entering rodeos. So fast forward to February of 2014, I broke my shoulder in Jackson, Mississippi at the big pro rodeo there. And at the time I was working at a pipe yard, so I couldn't work. I couldn't ride
Oh.
a horse. I couldn't ride broncs, couldn't do anything. So I just so happened to be sitting at the table looking at job listings, and I found the Oklahoma Conservation Commission.
Oh, yes.
So if I hadn't broke that shoulder, I'd still probably be working at that pipe yard today.
Oh,
So I would not have a rodeo career without conservation, and I would not have a conservation career without rodeo. So those two parts of me are inseparable in any case. So you don't like talking about grass, we can talk about rodeo. If you don't like talking about rodeo, we'll talk about grass. But either one, we'll never run out of stuff to talk about.
oh, yeah. It's interesting how things work out in life. Blane, I'm really glad we got you on here. I mentioned to you in the email, I've been planning to get you on here for a long time, but I try to monitor how many Okies I have on here so that so it's not too Oklahoma centric.
Sure.
So try to space them out. But really enjoyed the conversation today and appreciate you coming on and sharing.
Absolutely. Again, if you're interested in any kind of conservation technical assistance, outreach, or education, our soil health program at the Oklahoma Conservation Commission, or if you just want to talk grass and grazing, I'm an open book. I'm actually hoping to shape and maintain my operation as a demonstration farm to utilize for folks to come in and view.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you, Blane. I really hope you enjoyed today's conversation. I know I did. Thank you for listening. And if you found something useful, please share it. Share it on your social media. Tell your friends. Get the word out about the podcast. Helps us grow. If you happen to be a grass farmer and you'd like to share about your journey, go to grazinggrass.com and click on Be Our Guest. Fill out the form and I'll be in touch. We appreciate your support by sharing our episodes and telling your friends about it. You can also support our show by buying our merch. We get a little bit back from that. Another way to support the show is by becoming a Grazing Grass Insider. Grazing Grass Insiders enjoy bonus content, monthly Zooms, and discounts. You can visit the website, grazinggrass.com, click on support, and they'll have the links there. Also, if you haven't left us a review, please do. It really helps us as people are searching for podcasts. And I was just checking them, and we do not have very many reviews for 2024. So if you haven't left us a review, please do. Until next time, keep on grazing grass.